All right, we just cracked 100 participants and we're a minute past, so I think we'll get going. Thanks again for joining. This is a public consultation webinar for the methodology framework for carbon capture and storage. I'm joined today by a number of panelists from within Verra and within the CCS Plus initiative. And we'll do introductions in a second, but we're going to be presenting to you the content of the draft modules and tools that we put out for public consultation. The presentation will last somewhere around 25 to 30 minutes, and then we hope to have about half of the time, or maybe 30 minutes, for question and answer. The questions will be managed through the chat function within Zoom. So all participants are encouraged to find that and make use of it. You're encouraged to submit chat questions during the presentation itself. So feel free to kind of type them in live when you're feeling them. But the questions won't be answered till the end. So we're going to sort of curate the response period at the end based on all the questions that we've collected throughout the presentation. So all participants' microphones are on mute throughout, so I don't think that it's possible for you to change that. The presentation and the questions are recorded. They're going to be published afterwards, both on the website that's on our website for the public consultation and on YouTube. And so with that, I'll allow the team to quickly introduce themselves. I am Ian Verra. I'm Director of Industrial and Energy Innovations with Verra, and I lead the team working on the CCS Plus framework, and I'll turn it over to Jordan.
Hey, my name is Jordan Comerfield. I'm the Manager of Energy and Industrial Innovation here at Verra. I'll pass it on to Julie.
Julia Guko, Senior Program Officer for Energy Innovation at Verra. John.
Hi, my name is John Sandoval. I am a Senior Program Officer at the Energy and Industrial Innovation at Verra. Matthias.
Hello, my name is Matthias Krei, and I'm the co-lead of the CCS Plus initiative. And I pass on to Engin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Engin, and I'm working at the technical team in the CCS Plus initiative. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, guys. So with that, we'll kick off the slideshow, and I'll turn it over to John.
Thank you. Well, I will start with today's objectives. The main objective is to present an overview of the proposed second batch of the CCS modules and tools, including the module for CO2 capture from bioenergy combustion, two tools, the reduction and removal tools, and the non-BCS CO2 accounting tool, and a module for CO2 storage in saline aquifers and depleted hydrocarbon reservoirs. Right, then the agenda for today's webinar includes an overview of Verra as an organization and the VCS program. And later we'll talk about the methodology development and approval process, MDRP. Then we'll know about the CCS Plus initiative, which is the lead developer of this methodology, and an introduction to batch 2 of the CCS methodology framework, which includes the documents, the BEX module, reduction and removal tools, non-BCS tool, and the storage modules. At the end, then we'll close off with a Q&A session. Next, please. Right, so let's begin with a quick introduction to Verra and its flagship program, the Verify Carbon Standard. We can go to the next one, please. And well, we can start by saying that Verra is a non-profit organization established in 2007. Verra's staff includes nearly 190 professionals, and its main headquarters are in Washington. However, Verra has a remote workforce around the world, continually collaborating to deliver high integrity standards across various sectors. And our main focus is on the management of standards for a sustainable future, and we work continuously to accelerate climate action and sustainable development. Next, please. Okay, so Verra goes beyond carbon. We are a standard-setting body that catalyzes impactful climate action and sustainable development across various sectors. The VCS is the most widely used global voluntary carbon market standard in the world. But Verra has diversified and currently includes programs like the jurisdictional and nested RED Plus standard, the climate, community, and biodiversity standards, CCB, aimed at improving the living condition of local communities, small farmers, and the conservation of biodiversity. The Sustainable Development Verified Impact Standard, SD-VISTA, focus on the certification of SDG benefits. It's worth mentioning that both the CCB and the SD-VISTA can be used as standalone standards or in conjunction with the VCS for the additional impact. And finally, the Plastic Waste Reduction Standard, which is designed to issue plastic credits for waste collection and recycling projects around the world. Next, please. Right, the VCS, as I mentioned before, is Verra's flagship program and the platform under which the current methodology, the CCS methodology, is being developed. Is the world's most widely used voluntary greenhouse gas program, and this has allowed Verra to gain a lot of experience in the setting of methodologies for the development of projects at a global scale. Next one, please. One way to look at the great impact that the VCS program has in the voluntary carbon market world is by looking at this impressive track record. We can mention, for instance, that there's already over 2,100 registered projects, 1.2 billion carbon credits issued to date, and this is equivalent to offsetting the emissions of over 260 coal-fired power plants in a year. It is also worth noting that the VCS program itself has won the Environmental Finance's Voluntary Carbon Market Rankings Award for a number of years. Next one, please. Right, so now let's dive into the methodology development and approval process, MDRP, used by Verra to ensure the quality and rigor of our standards. Next, please. The MDRP process starts when project developers submit a proposal outlining the methodology's key elements to Verra for an initial review. Then the developer prepares the concept note outlining key elements like the baseline assessment, additionality, greenhouse gas quantification, monitoring, etc. And then Verra reviews whether the methodology meets or not the VCS program rules and requirements. Later, following approval of the concept note, the proposed methodology is drafted, which must be clearly written using the appropriate guidelines and templates provided by Verra. And then Verra conducts a public stakeholder consultation, which aims to ensure transparency and gather valuable feedback using the appropriate guidelines and templates provided by Verra. Verra conducts the methodology development itself following approval of the concept note, then the public stakeholder consultation. This is a 30-day comment period. And then it comes the next phase where an accredited BVB or validation verification body assesses the methodology and comments received during the public consultation period. And then finally, Verra reviews the methodology and the BV assessment of a report and determines whether the methodology can be approved or not. Right now, I'm going to turn it over to Matthias Kree, who will be talking about the CCS Plus initiative and the structure and development of the CCS framework.
Thank you, John. And thank you, everyone, for being here and coming to this webinar and your interest in learning about what we have submitted to Verra as the CCS Plus initiative. And thank you for Verra for having us here represented, that we can explain what CCS Plus is and what we have developed. The goal of the CCS Plus initiative is to develop a carbon crediting framework that is high quality and that allows CCS projects that are in part still very nascent to scale. And to do this for emission reductions as well as removal projects, because CCS, as you know, can lead to both of these outcomes. And CCS Plus initiative is supported by its members. The work wouldn't be able, if not a large number of industries and a large number of finances and supporters of the CCS Plus initiative would enable the work. And the CCS Plus initiative has chosen VCS as the go-to standard to develop the methodologies under. So a few words on the next slide about how we are doing this. How are we developing those methodologies? And there are a couple of high-level points that I'd like to share with you. And one is that we are developing what we call an integrated framework for accounting of the emission reductions and removals and essentially the carbon credits. And with that, we do this for the full suite of CCS projects. And CCS means here also CCUS, as long as the EU is really long-term, so that the CO2 is locked away for permanently, although used, for example, in products for long time periods, and involves the tech CDR solutions, just to make sure that the breadth of the activities is clear. And our approach is that I can see that the slides are have flipped a little bit ahead. Ian, can you just bring me back to the earlier slide, please? One before, yes. And the CCS Plus is really about the interested parties in developing these methodologies, coming together, developers, technology suppliers, academia, and also research, and in helping this methodology framework to move forward and have impact. And at the end, we are creating a public good that will hopefully create a race to the top with regards to the quality of accounting for all types of CCS projects. So who is in the initiative? This is what you can see on the next slide. You can see that we really have diverse representation. Our SteerCo is consisting of the companies you can see here in the core partner section. You can see there are various players, industry players, there are utilities, there are oil and gas companies, and there's also a research institute, so a diverse set of players in the SteerCo. You can see here the amount of partners and technology partners that we have in the initiative. So overall, we are talking about more than 40 partners in the initiative that co-create together with our carbon consultants and under moderation and facilitation of our carbon consultants, the methodological outputs. And we are very happy that we have a very prestigious advisory group of the organization that you can see listed here that supports our work in the CCS Plus initiative. We always say that we are developing the methodology framework with a plug-and-play approach in mind. So what does that essentially mean? It means that we are developing what is called a methodology in our framework. And that methodology, you can see this on the left-hand side here, the overarching methodology, the CCS Plus methodology and the CCUS Plus methodology. And you can think about those as the motherboards, in a PC where you're connecting different types of technical, devices to have your computer operate. And those motherboards, those methodologies define the general approach, the eligibility, for example. They define the project boundary approach, the baseline and additionality, for example. And then you can connect to this motherboard different modules that represent the value chain and that provide solutions for accounting across those value chains. You can see here capture modules, you can see here a module for all types of transports and different types of storage and use modules that the CCS Plus initiative intends to develop. So how is this applied if you are a project developer? How do you go about using the CCS Plus methodology framework? This is what is shown on the next slide. And the first step is that you check for your project type that you have in mind, you check the methodologies for eligibility. Is your project type eligible or not? When you have determined based on the methodology that it is, then you go and choose the building blocks, the correct modules that reflect your value chain. Let's say you are developing a direct air capture project, transport via pipeline and storage in a saline aquifer. Then you find these modules under the CCS Plus initiative and combine them, as I said earlier, in a plug and play approach. So how is this relevant beyond carbon crediting or submitting and registering a project for carbon credit generation under the Verra's VCS? This is what you can see on the next and final slide. We have the ambition that we want to develop the methodologies as compliance grade. And what we mean by that is that on a regional and national and supranational level, for example, the UN, you have different frameworks that are currently being developed with the same aim of generating carbon credits or certificates, or how they might be called in the different regimes. And what our aim is that the CCS Plus initiative can provide blueprints or templates or part of the solution of the frameworks that these schemes will need once they are implemented. For example, the EU's CRCF is just one example. So what we have developed in the CCS Plus initiative beyond the methodological outputs are what we call compliance guidances that provide some orientation to policymakers as well as project developers, how the solutions, the technical accounting solutions that we have built and are building in the CCS Plus initiative can be used in those different contexts. So I'll stop here, hand back to the Verra team, and to present what we have submitted to them.
Thanks, Matthias. I'll take over now. So we're going to start with the introduction to the batch 2 documents of the CCS framework. You can see the objectives that we set out with at the beginning of development here listed on the screen. And over the next couple of slides, we're going to discuss these objectives within the context of the modules and tools that we developed. Moving to the next slide, you can start with the BECS module. I think we're all aware that the BECS projects offer significant potential as part of the global response to climate change, as carbon dioxide is removed from short-lived carbon pools in the atmosphere to be stored in more durable long-term storage. However, it's important to acknowledge that there is a need to safeguard against the risks to natural systems and the communities that live most closely with the land that are associated with the sourcing of biomass. And we'll talk more about the precautions that we've developed to protect against these negative impacts in a moment. The BECS module itself was designed to provide an accurate accounting of the net project impact by including emissions from the biomass life cycle, as well as the capture facility itself. And while accounting for the direct emissions impact of the biomass life cycle is relatively straightforward, the process for estimating the indirect emissions impact is more uncertain. And that's why we've asked for some feedback on the next slide regarding the tools that we can use to improve. So please take the time to contribute feedback. It helps strengthen the quality of these documents and the framework itself. Moving to the next slide, I'm going to talk about the safeguards we've developed to protect sustainable biomass and to protect against those negative impacts. What you see on the screen now is the 8 sustainability principles that are outlined in the reductions and removals tool. I want to make a note that only biomass that meets these principles and can be demonstrated to do so is eligible to generate removals. And of course, that assumes that the amount of removals exceeds the emissions associated with the project, i.e. the project is net negative. Biomass that cannot meet these principles is considered as non-traceable under the framework and is subject to usage limits, and the credits associated are discounted. We've identified several regulatory programs that qualify, including the UK renewables obligation from 2015 and the Directive 2018-2001 of the European Parliament and of the Council of December 11th, 2018. We're also, excuse me, we've also identified some sustainability certification programs that qualify. Moving to the next slide, though we recognize that these programs may not apply globally, and that's why we're asking for your feedback on similar programs that provide, again, a similar level of assurance that we're protecting against the negative impacts of sourcing biomass for these projects. Moving to the next slide, please. Talking about the reductions and removals tool itself. Excellent. This tool functions to differentiate baseline emissions and allocates project and leakage emissions among activities that result in both GHG emission reductions and removals. There's a need for this tool because we recognize that some facilities are going to end up using mixed feedstocks by design or out of necessity. We want to be able to separate the emissions from sustainable biomass from those of non-traceable biomass or fossil feedstocks. In doing so, this tool serves to protect the integrity of the removal credits and helps to avoid diluting the market signal for investors. The reductions and removals tool also incents the move away from unsustainable biomass or non-traceable biomass, pardon me, by discounting the reductions generated by products and then making non-traceable biomass ineligible in the second crediting period. Moving to the next slide, we have our feedback questions. And here we're looking for your feedback on whether this approach is adequate to help project developers and project owners move away from non-traceable biomass. Next slide, please. We've included a tool for accounting for non-BCS CO2 in CCS projects. So what I mean by that is that non-BCS CO2 are CO2 flows that move through the project boundary that are not eligible for crediting under the project. This tool will allow CCS hubs that are systems shared by several emitters that use the same transportation, storage, and utilization infrastructure. Enabling these hubs is an important step towards scaling the climate impact of CCS by improving their cost effectiveness and development times. Once finalized, the framework, along with related modules and tools, will be the first global methodology that allows and encourages collaborative CCS hubs and shared infrastructure for the efficient and scalable deployment of multiple CCS technologies. Moving to the next slide, you can see our feedback that we're asking for on this one. It's basically, the theme is pretty consistent on our feedback. We're asking if you can identify ways for us to improve the robustness of our accounting approaches. Moving on to the next slide, please. This is the module for storage, CO2 storage in saline aquifers and depleted hydrocarbon reservoirs. It applies to both of those storage or types of storage. This module was actually part of batch 1 and has been updated based on the feedback that we received. But again, this is an iterative approach where we develop and you comment, and that iterative cycle leads to a better product. So we've brought this back for a second consultation. So please have a look and let us know if this is sufficient. This provides sufficient protections for the monitoring procedures for injection, the long-term storage integrity, as well as the procedures to quantify project emissions from the storage site. Moving on to the feedback questions for this module. In the next slide, please. Yeah, please have a look. Please take the time. Again, it's a collaborative approach, and we definitely value your feedback. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Julie to lead you through the next steps for batch 2 and ongoing related work. Thanks.
Thanks, Jordan. Thanks, Ian. So the following public consultation, this will be ongoing up to the 15th of April. So all these documents are available on the Verra website, and once this presentation is shared, you can simply click the link and find yourself on the page. And as part of the public consultation includes all those and tools presented by Jordan. And there is a comment sheet to submit your questions, comments, and feedback on the published documents. All documents will be submitted to our methodologies team at the email address shown on the slide. Next slide. Yes, as we mentioned, this is batch 2, so there will be again a public consultation running up to mid-April, that is April 15th, and this is in compliance with the MDRP process, which gives a minimum of 30 days feedback from stakeholders. Following the public consultation period, we will have a revision of the modules on the tools to integrate your feedback to update as needed. And following the revision from the public consultation, the documents are submitted to a validation and verification body. And this is concluded with a validation report that is afterwards sent our way, sent to Verra to review and approve. And finally, the modules and the tools are put up on the Verra website for use for project developments by any and all stakeholders that may meet the requirements. Next slide. Given the ongoing CCS, there are a number of other moving pieces that will support or will complement the ongoing work on batch 2. And the first one is the methodology for CCS documents. It has been mentioned that this is batch 2. So batch 1 introduced the methodology framework for CCS. And with this, the module for the DAX projects, there were tools for transport and storage. So all these are similarly available on the Verra website, and they, as Matthias mentioned, this is a plug and play. There are modules and tools that will be working together for eligible project activities. We have the geological carbon storage requirements document, the GCS document, and the document provides guidelines for projects related to GCS. It encompasses everything from capture and storage, mineralization, carbon utilization and storage in geological reservoirs. So similarly, this is found on the website. And in addition to GCS requirements documents, all CCS projects developed under CS would still have to comply by the VCS requirements. We have, in addition to all that, we have the GCS and PR tool, the non-permanence risk tool, and it provides procedures for assessing non-permanence risk and determining buffers in the GCS projects. It will guide the project properness and the VVBs. And similarly, this was developed collaboratively with the CCS Plus initiative, and it ensures that the issued VCUs remain valid despite potential risks, as all the risks are assessed and shown using the non-permanent risk tool. Further to all that, we opened a public consultation for the VCS program, and within it, there were questions around embodied emissions and construction emissions, and particularly related to the DAX project activities. So the public consultation took place last year. That was around July to August. And during that public consultation period, Verra was seeking feedback from stakeholders for the updates to requirements for when construction and upstream emissions must be included within VCS methodologies. It's a great read and would be worth reviewing and seeing if you can share some feedback our way. We have potential future updates still related to CCS work and will complement the ongoing CCS work. And a key one is an electricity tool being developed for the VCS. And the intention is to provide consistent measurement procedures for electricity consumption, and particularly guidelines for purpose-built green PPAs. Of note are the greenfield projects that are being considered for CCS projects. So this electricity tool is going to potentially be used in parallel with all the tools, with some of the tools and the modules we have mentioned in the previous slides, and similarly in batch 1. And finally, we have a VCS definition for sustainable biomass. This is an ongoing work stream within the VCS, and it will lay out a definition for sustainable biomass and requirements for sustainable feedstock. This will encompass everything around maintaining carbon stocks, conversion of land, etc. And this will similarly be put up for public consultation once complete within Verra. Next slide, Ian. Having said all that, we will run a Q&A session, and Ian did mention that you are to send in your questions through the chat, and some of them will be read out loud, and some of them will probably be answered in the Q&A box. So yeah, Ian, take it away.
Great, thanks, Julie. So as Julie mentioned, the instructions for the participants are to start submitting questions. We've got several already, so we'll start kind of curating the ones that make the most sense and add the most value for the audience. And then for my fellow panelists, if amongst the questions that you see, there's any that you in particular would like to answer live, you can use the button in the chat feature to indicate that you'd be interested in answering live. So the first one I'll take a crack at, and I would say, Jordan, if you want to fill in afterwards, please do so. The question is whether wastewater treatment methods are eligible for crediting. And I think this is an important one and good sort of for setting the stage of the scope for the documents in the batch 2 consultation. So this consultation is focusing on bioenergy combustion. So though we often mention BECCS as a quick reference acronym, it is specific to combustion of biomass and the post-combustion capture of it. So other activities like wastewater treatment or ethanol production, fermentation of biomass to produce ethanol, though they result in biogenic CO2 being captured, they're not in the scope of this consultation. And I think, as Matthias showed on one of his slides, are subject to the scope of a future module, and that would just be the, I think it's called maybe the industrial process BECS module. So that one's that. Anything to add, Jordan?
Ian, yeah, no, I think you covered it. I think the plan is to develop another bioenergy module that covers conversion of biomass. So the BECS module that we've included in batch 2 covers BECS from combustion of biomass. The next module that we're looking at developing in conjunction with CCS Plus is BECS from the conversion of biomass. So that would include wastewater treatment, gasification, pyrolysis, potentially fermentation as well. That's all
Great.
I have to add on that one.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So there's a couple of questions in the chat about whether the modules are developed maybe alongside with or under the guidance of the IPCC. And I'll maybe give some introductory remarks, and Matthias, you can follow up if you want to add anything about maybe the longer term ambitions of incorporating the work that we're doing into multinational frameworks or national frameworks on the compliance side. So Verra is a voluntary carbon standard, or the VCS is a voluntary carbon standard. Verra is the organization that runs it. We're developing a methodology for use in the VCS. The approach we've taken here is one that has sort of a longer term vision. We've gathered a very large group, or a very large group has come together and includes, stakeholders from all reaches of the globe and many sectors and subsectors that will be participating in CCS or CCS related activities in the coming years and decades. And so with that group, we're getting some, like a really deep bench, a really sort of broad set of expertise and experience. And so we're using that to create a methodology that should work at a global scale for very large projects, very wide sort of ranging types of projects. And we see that as, first of all, quite difficult to kind of just manage and put together and complete. Second of all, very useful and potentially useful for governments or multinationals like the UN or the IPCC. So we do have an eye towards that, but we're not the IPCC, we're not the UNFCCC, and so there's separation in terms of like who is doing this. I'll stop there. Matthias, anything to add?
Yes, happy to do that. Thank you, Ian. Maybe to add that although there might not be guidance out from the IPCC that precisely prescribes on how accounting of CO2 would need to be done for carbon capture projects, there is a lot of guidance from national bodies, national regulators, both in the US and the EU, that has been taken into account, for example, when it comes to issues like requirements for storage site selection, for monitoring during the operation and for monitoring, post-closure activities, just to name a few that we have been able to build this on, particularly the CCS methodology. And then also the Global CCS Institute, for example, or the International Energy Agency, there's a lot of material out there, that we have used to, build what we thought of was a high quality approach to accounting for this. And with regards to the comment, Ian, that you have been making, there, it is clear on various, various levels on the national and the supranational level on what will be the criteria for high quality emission reduction and carbon removal from CCS. For example, the EU, has come out with its quality criteria for the EU carbon removal certification framework. So this has certainly, influenced our thinking with regards to, defining, what is sustainable in terms of biomass, and what does permanent mean, for example, just to name a few. And then there is, of course, the work on at the level of the UN on the Article 6, where requirements, have been defined, and where we have reflected on what does that mean now for a high quality CCS accounting framework, that is developed, as a lot of important decisions on the policy level are being taken. So we attempted, and I think we have succeeded, although sort of pending your feedback on this, of course, to be as reflective as we possibly could on the latest developments.
Great, thanks. Great answer. Okay, so next question. Would the VCS/CCS Plus also cover nature-based CDR in the future? I think I can take this one. Matthias, jump in if I misspeak. But I think CCS Plus is focusing on geological and industrial utilization techniques. So if what is meant by nature-based CDR refers to forestry and agricultural or even biochar activities, the answer would be no, CCS Plus will not cover that. The VCS does have methodologies that are outside of the CCS Plus framework that address those. Some of them are existing and available on our website right now. Some of them might be under development, or some of them may be sort of existing, but don't necessarily have the methodological guidance that instruct what fraction of the benefits from that activity are removals versus reductions. So there's sort of a legacy issue, and I think we're working on converting a number of those and updating and revising those methodologies so that they do distinguish and differentiate the removals from reductions. Anything there, Matthias?
Nothing to add, just to underline, that the CCS Plus initiative is about technological carbon removal, if we focus now the discussion on carbon removals, and not about nature-based. That's correct, yes.
Great, okay. Good, so I've been sort of trying to focus on scope-based questions up until now, and I think we've probably got through the majority of those, and I will move on to maybe a little bit more technical, but actually one just popped up as I was saying that. I think, Matthias, this might be best for you. What will be the impact of the EU CRCF on the CCS Verra methodology under development?
That's a very good question. That is not easy to answer because we, as I said before, the EU CRCF, has come out with a quality criteria, and it is now clear, that all political levels in the EU, have decided that the EU CRCF is to be implemented. There is a technical work stream, ongoing under EU DG Klima, that has been started around 1.5 years ago, and where the principles for methodologies for the EU CRCF have been discussed. And At a high level, I would say that CCS Plus initiative and the way we are approaching the methodology development should tick all the boxes. In a meeting towards the end of last year, it has been mentioned, that the modular approach taken by the CCS Plus initiative would actually be a favorable approach for the EU to pursue for the EU carbon removal certification framework. So we see this as a recognition of our selection of approaches in the CCS Plus initiative when it comes to the plug and play approach. What is important now is that we observe and follow and interact where we can from the CCS Plus initiative side, with the decision makers at the EU level, as the next step for the DG Klima is to build out the methodologies. So there, of course, we are very happy to have conversations and share our lessons learned with the decision makers.
Great, thanks a lot. Okay, as I mentioned, moving away from the kind of high-level scope questions and more towards some of the more technical quantification-related questions. This one might be for you, Engin. It's related to the carbon stocks of existing forests. So I'll do my best to try and paraphrase just to make it sort of a more easier question. So how do we determine the carbon in existing forests, and what certification or standard frameworks are being relied on?
Thank you, Ian. So in the current framework, actually, we identified several sustainability principles for the biomass feedstock, and all project developers has to follow these sustainability requirements and demonstrate sustainability requirements within the regulatory framework that is available in their jurisdiction, or the sustainability certification systems that are defined in the modules, which are some of them are Forest Stewardship Council, Sustainable Biomass Program, or for crops also we have identified several sustainability certification programs to demonstrate sustainability of the feedstock. And regarding the changes in the carbon stocks in the forest, actually we identified the market leakage in the calculation. We also included the accounting of market leakage in the BECS module. So if the carbon stocks has been changing enormously, actually it is already be accounted in the calculations for finding the net removals or reductions. And in addition to that, project proponents has to follow the sustainability certification or jurisdiction requirements, so which do not allow changes in the carbon stocks in the forests actually. So in the methodology, in summary, we do not calculate the changes in the carbon stocks, but we rely on the jurisdictional requirements, regulatory requirements, and all the sustainability certification systems.
Great.
I hope this answers the question.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot. That's a good answer. Okay, next one is probably one I'll take, and others maybe from Verra can jump in if they want. Can you speak to any DMRV, so digital monitoring, reporting, verification efforts that may arrive in the near future? I understand this is more so for the project developers and third parties, but facilitation by Verra and team is necessary and will allow for transparency. Would love to hear more about any efforts associated with this. Thanks. So Verra has a DMRV pilot that is being administered by a different team, so a technology team within Verra. And I think up till now, it's focusing on remote sensing related activities for nature-based solutions. So kind of remote sensing for forestry and agriculture. So like canopy detection and maybe land use changes and things like that. There's a lot of value there, obviously, in terms of improving the integrity and the transparency. For CCS, I see it as actually a really important medium term, so not even long-term future. Remote sensing may be a part of it, but it's probably not the kind of, it's not going to take center stage, just because I see remote sensing as being a part of the monitoring program for detecting leaks from a reservoir. But in fact, that's, there's just unlikely to be a lot of events related to that. And so the digital monitoring and reporting will primarily be platforms, interconnected systems where metering data, whether it's like flows, temperatures, pressures, things like that from the site, are being aggregated and processed and synthesized for reporting in a more kind of real-time, automated and transparent way. I see that as the future, and frankly, it would be silly to not be pursuing that. So that's certainly on our mind, but it's not part of the actual DMRV pilot that I kind of introduced at the beginning. Projects don't have to go through the DMRV pilot to then have remote sensing programs or use digital automation tools for reporting information. It's just kind of the process that Verra has been going through to understand what changes we have to make either in our registry or in the project hub to facilitate that. CCS Plus, or the CCS Plus methodology framework, is on the list for methodologies to be digitized and for Verra to be accepting ongoing digital reporting. And we'll do that once the methodologies are done. So we're not co-developing changes to the project hub or to the registry while the methodologies are in development, because there's elements of the methodology that are changing. There's a lot in flux, and it would just sort of be a really difficult project to manage from a software development perspective if we were sort of trying to match the ebbs and flows of methodology development. So that's to come in the future. If no other additions from the Verra team, I think we'll move on. There's a question: could you please explain the difference between the work currently being done by VCS, mentioned in the presentation on defining sustainable biomass, versus the definition of sustainable biomass already provided in current batch 2 modules? Julie, do you want to take a crack at answering that one?
Oh, sure. It's actually typing, but this may be easier. It does not differ. The VCS program will be, definition and requirements will be an overarching definition and requirements for biomass. And this will be applicable to all sorts of VCS project types, including blue carbon, air, project activities. It's just CCS, and for the methodology development of CCS, this was a very big part of the discussion and part of the consultation for that ongoing work. So no, this will not be different. VCS work will provide overarching, and then at the methodology level, it will be prescribed specifically for CCS and how they will meet those VCS requirements.
Great, thanks a lot. Okay, we're coming close to the end of the hour. We might have time for 1 or 2 more questions. I see, Matthias, there's a question for you to answer. This one a little bit on scope, but it's okay. So are the batch 1 methodologies and geo-storage modules published and available for project listing? Are they still in draft form? If the latter, what is the timing for publication?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ian. And I think it's important to answer that question, although a little bit out of scope, because at the end, the batch 2 relies on the CCS methodology to be finally approved. And so I can share with you that we are at the moment. And John presented the different steps, you know, that that the methodology has to go through in the Verra process of quality assurance, you know, and quality control, and making sure that everything is consistent and according to Verra standards. That there is the step of VVB initial assessment, and that's actually the last step before Verra's consolidation and publication, if I'm using my own words now, of the methodology. So batch 1 is in that stage of VVB initial assessment. We are making good progress together with the VVB, and there, as you can expect, you know, there's a lot to be answered for such a novel project type, but progress is good. So so I would be, you know, hopefully not you know, promising too much if I say that within the next couple of months, you know, these this batch 1 documents, including the methodology, will then hopefully see the light of day.
Great, thanks a lot, Matthias. So with that, I think we'll close out the question session. There are a few questions remaining, and I think we'll probably try and type the answers over the next couple of minutes here. We're about at the top of the hour, so I guess I'll just close us out. Wanted to take the opportunity to thank everyone for participating and for the interest in the VCS and in the CCS Plus initiative. We have contact information shown on the screen here on this thank you slide. If you have any follow-up questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to any one of us. And I'll again remind the participants, we have the public consultation for the batch 2 documents open until April 15th. And the feedback formally should be submitted on both the questions that Jordan presented and any other general feedback to methodologies@verra.org, which I think was presented by Julie on a slide earlier in the presentation. Thanks, everyone. We appreciate your interest. Have a good day.